Hello, good morning, good afternoon, for wherever you are in the world. Very welcome to 2020 Asian Evaluation Week, Session 15, Draw It, How Visual Thinking Helps Evaluation Improve Engagement, Use, and Influence. My name is Keisuke. I'm a moderator for this session, and I'm happy to have two presenters here, Yumiko Kanemitsu and Katherine Haugh. And I think they will introduce themselves later on, but let me go ahead and share the takeaways and how it is linked to the AEW 2020. Next slide, please. So session key takeaways is learn how to innovative methods of visual thinking of facilitation can be applied to improve the use and influence evaluation, from theory of change to validating key findings, from prioritizing key recommendation to communicating with stakeholders. So basically this is the matching of evaluation, facilitation, and visual thinking. So that's the session is about. And how this connected to the 2020 AW theme is, go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is more innovative side of the 2020 AW theme, and visual thinking and evaluation facilitation methods are well connected to future thinking and solution focused approach, and creativity and innovation, and systems thinking. And our intention today is to not only talk about the facilitation and visual thinking, but also apply it to this session itself. So this session will be a very hands-on, practical, and even you have opportunity to draw yourself. So if you do not have a pen and paper nearby, please grab it while I'm still doing in the checking in. So can you go to the next slide, please? As I said, this session will be a participatory, and I want to ask you a very simple question as a way of checking in. Where are you calling in from? I know people are spread around the world. And if you could turn the chat on and see if you could just type where you're typing from, calling it from. There's Manila, Finland, Australia, Georgia, Switzerland, Amsterdam, Islamabad, two from Pakistan, from my room, and Sudan, France, Luxembourg, Philippines, Germany, Hong Kong, Slovakia, Saudi Arabia, Italy, Austria, UK, oh my God, Bangkok, Nepal, Vancouver, Colombo, Georgia, Almaty, India, West Sussex, United Kingdom, Indonesia, Manila, India. Wow. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm really excited to see so many people from all over the world. Great. And I have one more question. Can you go to the next slide, please? What are you looking to learn today? You know, this session is about visualization, facilitation in the field of evaluation. But if you want to have any particular expectation or best hope, we try to make sure that we touch on that. Please write in the chat as well. How to apply visual thinking to evaluation work. That's great. That's why it surprised me. I will try. Yumiko, Kat, that's your role. Surprise you. And I love visualization. Data to pictures, great. We will do a lot of visualization. And lessons learned. I think Yumiko will touch some basis of the lessons learned. And techniques. Experience sharing the use in visual thinking by using EVA. EVA, by the way, is the ADB tool to using AI and the big data. So that's how we can do that. Is a very interesting point. simple and no boring way to presenting important evaluation information. Yes, I agree 100%. How to present evaluation result in visual way, leveraging visual technique, interested in how others are using drawing, how to make theory interested to observe visuals, practical examples, how to improve better life, how visual like influence evaluation, tips for better evaluation facilitation, do's and don'ts, read the picture from 1,000. Is it a picture worth more than 1,000 words? Let's see, at the end of the session, I try to draw this whole session with my drawing tablet here. So yeah, let's see. Getting inspired and how to better communicate evaluation activity, visuals, effective utilization of visual thinking without over-presenting. Great. I think most of them we will cover. And as you more questions come in, I think there's another tool, not chat, but the Q&A tool that you can raise your questions for each participant. Oh, there's another, just came in, capturing audience attention, getting the message across effectively. Let's see if we can capture your attention for this next 90 minutes and engage different level of stakeholder, including project beneficiaries, and find interesting way. Great. So Yumiko, may I invite you to present the basic concept of visualization and evaluation in World Food Program, please.
Thank you, Keisuke. My name is Yumiko Kanemitsu. I'm a Regional Evaluation Officer for WFP, Regional Bureau for Asian Pacific. I'm covering 50 countries in Asian Pacific. So next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk about the our new initiatives called EvaluVision and what it's about, how we're doing it. And recently we conducted 2 virtual workshops in Myanmar and Bangladesh. So we thought this might be of your interest because of COVID time, you have to do it in online workshops. And then also lesson learned from that workshops. Okay, so next slide, please. So we actually living in the time of information overload. So how many emails and phone calls, text messages, and social media did you use yesterday? So yeah, so maybe we just with participants, maybe we ask, so how many have you used? Just some examples using chat. How many social media, phone calls, emails? Or you don't remember? Too many? None. There's too many to count. Yes, too many. So we don't even count it, just simply we use it all the time. So there's some figures. Yes, too many. So there's some figures. So for instance, there are 1.8 million scientific research papers published each year. And BBC and New York Times published over 10,000 articles last week. And over 3 million blog posted was published yesterday. And over 41 people rely on friends to discover and share content. And the content will be increased by 500% in 5 years' time, or even more. So what are the implications in evaluation in this information overloaded world? So, so we typically produce many reports, right? So, but how much are we actually digesting it? And typically we produce 50 to 60 pages evaluation with annexes, and it's very text heavy, and the language is often UN languages, so mostly English. And then people in the communities are informants, so we receive the information, but it's rare that they read the report, and it's rare that we provide the feedback to them. So it's even difficult for the government counterparts to read the report to understand, because English is not the first language. And then also even difficult for my colleagues in the organizations, because we often work by sectors. So then it's beyond the sector, it's very difficult to understand. So evaluation is so technical, and then it's not the language they use it in their sectors. So conclusion is that that's why I think why it is so evaluations are underutilized, why it is so difficult to use the evaluations. So next slide, please. So that's why we came up initiative called Evaluation. So it's evaluation facilitation plus visual thinking. So facilitations that they specialize in niche within the large world of facilitation. And the evaluation facilitation applies general facilitation knowledge and techniques, and to specialize the challenges of working with stakeholders in evaluation process. And the purpose is to enhance relevance and credibility and meaningfulness and utility to the people. So we help to have more evaluative thinking and lesson learned and seek for group solutions. And the part of visual thinking is that, so it's a organize thoughts and improve ability to think and communicate. It's a great way to convey a complex and potentially confusing information. And then the relationship with stakeholder is more involved, because not only capturing key contents virtually, but graphic facilitation also working with people to design the process and facilitate the workshop and make sure the next steps are clear. The next slide, please. So benefits of evaluation. So we're trying to solve the problems and bring in more benefits in the evaluation facilitation process. One is more engaging more people, and regardless of language, even illiterate people can join it and express themselves. And transferring the knowledge from community and the counterpart side, and from evaluation commissioners and the management side. And also solution focused and open to new ideas. And then also human brains, we can remember the story rather than just dots. So we're trying to connect the information more to stories. So we create in the mental stories so that they can remember it well. And we use it as a communication tool, internal communication and external communication. We created video as well. So it's, in conclusion, as we create attention and comprehensions and retention, so memorizing the stories, evaluation as a story. Next slide, please. And the 3 pillars of evaluation. So visual thinking validation workshops typically takes 2 sessions, one at the community level and another at the national level. We emphasize the community feedback on the evaluation findings with the people in the communities, and at the same time bridge the communication gap between the provincial and national levels. And the overall purpose of this approach is to provide space to talk with help of a presentation and graphic summary. In the process, stakeholders understand and discuss and validate the key evaluation findings. And they also identified and prioritize next steps, and which feed into the management response. The community level workshop gathers beneficiaries, subnational government officials, and local partners and project staff. We explain the key evaluation findings in the local language, and with the support of visual tools and participatory dialogue workshop, and facilitators also invite direct feedback from participants. So graphics summarize a video recording, then bring it to voices of the community into the national workshop. At the national workshop, policymakers, partners, donors, and WFP staff discuss the next steps in terms of our priorities, importance, and feasibilities. Next slide, please. So we recently conducted in the Myanmar, and that was the online, and then Bangladesh one was a face-to-face and online, and we also conducted face-to-face in Laos PDR. And we provided we share the link of the all workshops videos in YouTube. So please have a look at it. And the next slide, please. And I like to focus on the online one because a lot of organizations conducting online workshop now. So one is in Myanmar. It was about visual thinking, evaluation, validation workshop of relief food and cash assistance to conflict affected people in Kachin and Northern Shan. It was an evaluation, validation, validating findings and recommendations, and then lead to the management response. So, and also a video was shared with you. And it was conducted in April. So initially we planned to do it in face-to-face in the refugee camps, but because of COVID-19, we had to change it to the online workshop. So, and we connected all staff working from home. And so then it was a bit limited in the community participation side, but still had conducted the workshops meaningfully. And so we discussed that the recommendations, findings and recommendations, management response, and then now staff was using these graphics to communicate with the refugees in, actually it's internally displaced people in the camps. Next slide, please. The next one is Bangladesh. It's about emergency multi-sector Rohingya crisis response project. So this one is actually ongoing. So we did one workshop in August, and we will have the second workshop this week. So this is more about planning. So it's planning and evidence generation exercises. So the WFP's Bangladesh country office and has a project inception report, but people in different locations. So people in the Bangladesh, Dhaka and Cox's Bazar, and also a lot of people outside of Bangladesh because of COVID. So they all need to understand the program theory, and we need to refine it further. And also assessing the current situation caused by COVID-19 and adapt it according to changing the environment. So we help in that visualizing and using future thinking. Okay, next slide, please. So lesson learned from that. So just overall, the workshop and the methods are very well received. So it's successful. Well, we've been receiving very positive feedback and results. Also, but we have some lessons learned for further improvement and I'd like to share it with you. In the validation workshop, and after validating recommendations, we asked the participants to prioritize the recommendations and build a consensus. So people accept the recommendation, not accepting or partially accepting. So, but recently I received the draft of management response, and I found that still the country offices have difficulties drafting the management response. And I was wondering why. And one is because of the online, we can only have the workshop 3 hours. Beyond the 3 hours, it's very, very difficult to keep people's and also attentions. So we keep it to 3 hours, which when we do the face-to-face, we often do it in the whole days. But online, we have to do it in 3 hours. So more focus on validation of the findings. And then we talk about the recommendations, but it's a little bit lighter than the face-to-face. And so that end up in a more compilation of different activities by individuals and the levels of actions not corresponding to recommendations. That was my learning this time. And so I thought about what can I do in the future. So maybe we can have one more workshop for the management response or prepare more management response before the validation workshop. So I have to come, I'm thinking about the solution for this. And then also planning on visual workshop is really effective communications. So it's saving times and engaging dialogue and building consensus quickly. And then, so you need really good preparations and clearly have the purpose and the clarified product with the people engaged in and time management. And also follow-up actions is important. So refining theory of change and actually how we're going to use it, and then lead it to evidence generation exercises, especially monitoring and evaluation plan, and use theory of change throughout the project cycle. Okay, next slide, please. So what we're trying to do is that we're sharing examples like this with the evaluation, with the evaluation associations, conferences like this. And also we're trying to present it to the graphic facilitation associations. There is the graphics facilitation association as well. So sharing resources, because we are developing evaluation toolkits now. So share the resources and experiences. And what we're trying to do is matching the evaluator and the visual graphic facilitators. So the graphic facilitators who don't know about evaluations, we can introduce it. They can use it in evaluation. And the evaluator who don't have a contact with graphic facilitators but are interested in the method can meet each other. So we're trying to match these people. And they increase the number of people and if we work in this field. Okay, so next slide, please. So this is the guidance and toolkits we're working on. And as I said, it's a very visual, and the Keisuke is drawing it. And next one, please. Like this. So if you're interested in, or you're welcome to join our network. And I like to make this workshop and method more popular. So the last slide, please. So are you interested in this method first? And then how can this method be applied in your situation, and what situations, and how it will make a difference? How would you like to use it? Okay. That's we like to discuss it later. Or now, sorry.
Yeah,
over to you, Kate.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, please.
So if Mir, can you activate the chat again and see if we can answer to this question. How can this method be applied in your situation? In what situation that will be, and how will make a difference? And if you had, I didn't ask you about a question and answer. If you have other questions, you can also type it in the chat. I think it's more easier instead of going to Q&A. Sorry, Mia, I'm taking over all the controls of that Zoom function. So how would you, there was a few people in the expectation part that they love it, I want to use it. Actually, I want to ask you the same question. How will you use it? And this method is there. Visualization, think the graphic facilitators are available around the world. And if that is the case, how will you use the visualization? Great method development, TOC in the host community is great. And I will use my work to help people digest evaluation findings, sketch data, create particularly visual theory of change. I see a lot of applications. Lisa said, how do we join the network? Yes, we will tell more about how to join the network, great. And if you are also interested in the network, please do drop a line in the chat as well. Use this particular for children stakeholders. That's Jessica, that's a really good point. And especially the children can participate in the, not only the inputs, but also receiving the result of evaluation. This kind of visualization guide the student to build more comprehensive picture of the organization processes and challenges to solve. To promote user evaluation, make known key findings, and make sure actors take action upon recommendation once they are validated. So this kind of putting it a little bit more accountability side, that's not only writing up, but bringing everybody into the picture to enforce their follow-up actions. I will use it to collect responses for lessons learned workshop in particular. Yes, that's data collection and visualization can go very well. So that's a very good way of using it. is there a recommended application that can be used for graphic facilitation? Application as in the software, or if so, maybe cats in your facilitation that's you are use different applications, so maybe you can cover that. Yes, really interested. We also do workshop learning reviews and community members or partners. Sometimes there are ideas that are difficult to explain and too shy to speak up. Visual may help in expressing data. Very interested in to join the network. And this is a very useful method, especially when the stakeholders are semi-functionally literate. Yes. Also a good way to problem tree analysis workshops. I think this is a good point that Yumiko, can you explain a little bit more on the problem tree analysis, TOC, and how those two are, there's another comment of TOC, maybe it's good to share what is the role of traditional evaluation tools like problem trees and grids and Excel and this graphic method.
Well, this still we testing in Bangladesh, and we tested in August, and we do it in this week. So it's still work in progress. But I find this, especially as work so well online, because people in different locations, and if you just describe narratives in the sentences, people have a very different understanding. And actually for this Bangladesh case, they also have a logical framework. Some people say that we already have logical frameworks and program theory is clear. But once we started with this exercise, we have found a huge gap from activity levels to the outcomes. And then we started to fill in this between. And then because of the online, people talk over us and it's difficult to summarize, but Keisuke captures on the visually, and we could see where is actually missing, and where is actually we have to think more in depth. So then we could fill the whole pictures, then it's complete in the theory of change. And all managers said it was a brilliant exercise and tools. And then we further refining. So using the graphics and talking, but capturing this all discussions in the visually, it's really time saving as well.
Right. Thanks, Yumiko. Yes, indeed, it's the graphic, it's not really replacing that other methods, it's just adding to it to just distill and see different perspectives on that. And there's a few more. This method can be easily combined with PRA. PRA project, no, that's a computational role. Do you know PRA? Performance?
Appraisal.
Performance appraisal? Interesting, yes, maybe. I want to see that, how this will apply to the PRA. Tool to commit management, the follow-up agenda. There are people like me who can easily graph it using illustration. So it is hitting people in multiple perspectives using text and illustrations. Network, great, thank you. Interesting and creative method, effective apply various areas. This increasing engagement of learners for online courses. Online courses, that's interesting. Yeah, that's another way to use, like evaluation capacity building part. We never really talked about it, but that's also one part that we can use. Yes, that's, I think, an application about software from Maria. So, Kat, do you want to answer it already, Kat? What kind of application you use for the graphic facilitation?
Yeah, I would recommend, there's an application called Concepts. It's a really nice application. It's free, very easy to use. It has a wide ranging color palette. If you have a tablet and a stylus, or even you could do it on your iPhone with your finger as well, just to get started and play around. That's the first digital application software that I recommend. I usually work in Adobe Draw myself when I do the digital graphics, because it lends itself nicely then to the other Adobe Suite platforms. But I would recommend Concepts first because it's free and easy to get started. But even before you move into digital, I'd recommend just trying with pen and paper. And later on in the session, we'll do a bit of practice. So you have some opportunities to do some hands-on exercises with us with drawing. And for those, if you are interested in doing digital graphic facilitation, I'm also hosting a workshop that we'll share more about if you'd like to join for that to get some more practice.
Great, thank you. Any two for, oh, participable rural appraisal, PRA. Yes, thank you for the clarification. Yes, definitely, I can use that for that. PRA. And there's two more. Kindly share with the link to those great applications. And interesting how this method can help making thinking of solution idea less intimidating or making concept easier to be understood to increase participation. Right, great, great. So with that, I'd like to share my screen. It's still work in progress. And let me see. Do you see my screen? So this is what I start drawing when Yumiko start talking. And I'm still halfway done because I was about to write the PRA and all other trainings and other applications that I'm going to add here. I just wanted to demonstrate how this can work. Yumiko had the different slides, but I tried to capture the problem, the flow of the hard talk seems to be the problem side. And there's a benefit that we are co-creating right now and using those methods. So I tried, this can be done in a just flow and as long as I have the framework and the rest of the talk, I keep adding it so that in flow of that direction of the dialogue, we will have one canvas that reflects everybody's idea. And I will stop sharing, I keep drawing. And meantime, may I invite Kat to do your hands-on and you share your own experience as a graphic facilitator, recorder, and evaluator, please.
Thank you, Keisuke. Mayan, could you go back to the slides, please? Thank you. So hi, everybody. My name is Katherine Haugh. I'll introduce myself fully in just a moment, but I wanted to follow up on what Keisuke shared earlier, which is that we're going to do maybe 20-25 minutes of the visual hands-on exercises now to help you try your hand literally in drawing in an evaluation context. So if you haven't already gotten a piece of paper, it can be any kind of paper, the back of a receipt, any paper that you have laying around, and something to draw with. It could be a pen, a marker, a pencil. Please get that now since we'll be asking you to try your hand in drawing in just a moment. So this is a bit of a teaser to Visual Note-Taking 101. If you're feeling excited by what Yumiko and Keisuke presented and you'd like to try to apply this in your work, this is your opportunity to get started. Next slide, please. So to introduce myself, my name is Katherine Haugh. I am an evaluator and an organizational learning professional, and I'm also a graphic facilitator. And so I was really thrilled to meet Yumiko and Keisuke because I think it's a very, very unique and innovative approach to applying evaluation, facilitation, and visual thinking. And so I'm really excited to be here with you all today talking about this really fascinating topic that is near and dear to my heart and something I'm really passionate about. My experience, I mostly work in the fields of international development and social good. I previously worked for the branch of the US government that delivers foreign assistance called USAID. Many of you are probably familiar with the agency. And I now work as an organizational learning advisor for a consulting firm based in Washington, DC called the Global Knowledge Initiative. And a bit about my story. So I have always been a doodler since I was a kid, always sketching in my notebooks and drawing stick figures and things like that. And I found that it really helped me stay focused in the classroom and helped me learn quite a bit. And when I went to college, I also continued with my visual note-taking practice. And I was hired on my college campus to be a visual note-taker for the Disability Center on my campus. And so I was able to take visual notes for students that needed extra support in the classroom. And I found that to be just so energizing and really cool because I had always taken visual notes for myself to help me learn and stay engaged and stay laughing while I was in class. And it was a really cool moment for me to realize that my visuals could be useful for other people's learning. And so when I graduated college and I got my first job working as an evaluator, I continued to do sketches and sessions that I went to, and I went to actually the American Evaluation Association annual conference. And one of my colleagues had encouraged me to put my doodles up on the internet for people to see. And so I put these doodles out there about the evaluation concepts I was hearing and breaking down some things related to evaluation methodology and data collection, what we all talk about quite a bit. And I was really surprised to see that there was so much interest in the graphics that I had created. And so then since then, it's been maybe 10 years and I've set out to use visual thinking and graphic facilitation in my evaluation work, especially working cross-culturally. As Yumiko said, it has a lot of application. And I've even worked with Michael Quinn Patton, who is the founder of developmental evaluation and utilization focused evaluation. And I did some visual summaries for his recent book on facilitating evaluation in case you've read those and flip to the back and you can see some graphics that I made of his content. So that's all to say, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for listening to my life story. That was kind of long, but I'm really excited to expand the ways that I'm applying visual thinking in my work. And thank you all for your great ideas of applications so far. All right, next slide, please. So for me, I think one of the core competencies of being an evaluator is not just now becoming more of a facilitator and be able to manage kind of participatory discussions and consensus building, but also core competency for evaluators is to be able to take different types of information, different types of data, geographic data, qualitative data, quantitative data, and distill that data into key information that stakeholders need to know. So I think at its core, it's the process of curating information for discussion and learning. Next slide. And in my view, visual note-taking, which I define as the process of representing information through hand-drawn text, pictures, and symbols, is kind of this like secret tool, I think, for doing that distillation process. Because in taking visual notes, if you're doing it as a group in a facilitated exercise or as an individual, is really helpful for testing assumptions and getting at the root of, the key idea or the main points that you're really discussing. And so I think that visual note-taking can be a really powerful tool for an evaluator from a facilitation standpoint, and also just from the process of curating information. It's another, I think, more human application of data visualization in itself. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I've been doing this for about 10 years. So I've used visual notes in various ways for my own learning. I've also used it to help with problem solving in groups, especially when problems are tricky and related to systems and complexity. Something that I also do that Keisuke does as well is capture learning at events. So at an event like this one, I would sit in on a conversation and take notes like Keisuke is doing, that can be shared with other participants who weren't able to attend that session. I know this is particularly helpful because sometimes at conferences there are multiple sessions happening at the same time that you'd like to go to, and I myself experience a bit of FOMO sometimes of wanting to be in 2 places at once. So visual notes are a really helpful way to share information quickly from different sessions so that you can learn from different sessions that you might not have been at. I think also it's a fantastic brainstorming tool. I use it to generate ideas with groups, to distill data for reflection, to depict relationships between different things, concepts and entities, to uncover assumptions. It's helpful for communicating across cultures, as Yumiko said. And I think mostly to provide a mirror, because I think that something happens when you're drawing in a group or when one person is drawing and you're reflecting together, that it provides a mirror for the conversation that you're having and helps you look at things from a new perspective. Next slide, please. So before we get started with our drawing, I wanted to encourage you to have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And this is something, if you are interested in doing further training on, that I cover quite a bit in my trainings. Something that I notice for a lot of folks, and maybe some of you are feeling this now, is that when it comes to drawing, it can be a very vulnerable activity. And sometimes you can kind of limit yourself with your own thoughts. So I'll notice a lot of times, and I feel this too, that I'll see folks saying or thinking, I'm not an artist, or I'm bad at drawing, or I'm not doing it right, I can't do this. And know that those thoughts are valid, but know it's very hard to be creative and think expansively when you have those types of thinking about your own capabilities. So I'll encourage you to think, I'm willing to do my best. I like how I visualize this concept, and I'm willing to continuously improve it until it works. So there's my positive psychology spiel. Next slide, please. So before we get started with the 2 exercises that I'd like to do with you, I wanted just to get you thinking about the different types of templates that you could experiment with, not today, but just in general. And I also recommend taking a look at case work and the work of other graphic facilitators, because I think the best way to expand your visual note-taking approach is really to find inspiration. Like find people's styles who you love and try to draw what they draw and put your own spin on it. So here are some templates of ones that I've created to get you thinking. Next slide, please. So this is a template, one that I use quite a bit. It's very similar to an organization called Scriberia. They're UK based. They're one of my favorite graphic recording companies. They use this type of style that I adapted to make my own, with 5 key points and the title in the middle. Next slide, please. This is a visual that I put together for the Democracy Fund on a project that I'm working on with them about voter registration. And I like I use the road visual a lot, with 3 key points and a banner. Next slide, please. This was a bit of a fun one that I put together at a visual journalism conference that I attended a few years ago, with the title in the middle and the key points on the outside. Next slide. This is one that I put together for my old team at USAID. We did a book club every month, and I used to take visual notes for our book club, and this was a conversation we had about decision making. So I used an anchor visual in the center and then put the points around. Next slide, please. All right, so those are just some templates to get you thinking. I've been talking for a while, so I would like to invite you to start drawing with me if you are ready and feeling energized. Next slide, please. So something that is really cool about drawing is that if you know what's called the visual alphabet, you can draw anything around you. And you might be thinking, no, that's not true. How could that possibly be? But I'll show you in just a moment. So I'm going to invite you now just to draw these 12 symbols that you see on the screen. Anywhere on your piece of paper, just feel free to draw them out. So the point, the line, the angle, the arc, spiral, loop, oval, eye, triangle, rectangle, house or arrow, and the cloud. Give you a few more seconds to draw those out. Okay, next slide, please. So now that you know the 12 symbols, I'm going to show you that you can draw anything around you. So start by drawing the objects that you see on the screen. Just try to recreate what you see on the screen. And for those of you who are feeling rather confident drawing some of these objects, I'll invite you to draw something that you see around you. For example, maybe a coffee mug if it's early morning your time, or a wine glass if it's late your time, or a pillow on your couch. The things that you see in your home around you, and notice how the 12 simple shapes of the visual alphabet appear in the objects that you see around you. Okay. In this setting, I'm really curious to see everybody's drawings, but I know that's not possible. But I hope to see some of these drawings maybe after the conference, or if you post them somewhere, would love to see. It looks like the chat is also open in case you have questions or need more time as we're going through these exercises. But I'm going to move on to the next one. Thanks for jumping in and giving that one a try. Next slide, please. So the other component, or the other exercise that I'd like to focus on with you today is on drawing people. Next slide, please. As you can see in a lot of my drawings, I draw a lot of people, illustrating the concepts that the points are trying to make. And I think people are really helpful for making the visuals more human. That's something that I think is very different from other types of data visualization that maybe feel a bit more computerized, but those drawings I think have a really human quality, especially when you can draw characters that show movement and emotion. And so something that I've been doing quite a bit is expanding the diversity of stick figures and characters, and being really thoughtful about representing different types of people from different cultures, with different skin colors and different clothing. And so that's something that I'm really excited about, expanding kind of my visual library in this front. And if you have questions or ideas, please let me know, because I'm really passionate about that. But the most important thing is that you want to choose characters that can show movement. So they're running, jumping, sleeping, thinking, and emotion. If they're frustrated, if they're excited, if they're reflective. So next slide, please. So you can see here are just some characters to show different movements and emotion. Some are doing all sorts of stretches, even some are flying, some are thinking. And as you can see at the top, there are many different ways that you can draw characters. This is generally the way that I draw my characters down at the bottom, and then I add characteristics to represent diversity in a thoughtful way. But above, you can see other graphic facilitators use geometric shapes to illustrate diversity in stick figures. Something that I'm really thoughtful about is expanding visual associations with stereotypes. For example, if there's somebody says like a family, instead of drawing the stereotypical like mother, dad, child figure, maybe sometimes I'll draw like father, father, child, just to expand the ways that in my own mind, I'm thinking about the term family and to represent the diversity that we see in the world. And so what I'll ask you to do now is just the same. Try your hand at drawing some of the stick figures on the screen, jumping, high-fiving, and feel free to also explore what other ways of representing characters as well. Just a few more seconds to finish up your doodle. And this is, I think, a great opportunity if you have small kids around when they normally have to keep you space when you're doing your work. This is a great opportunity, as folks have mentioned, to invite your kids and your family members to come draw with you. As somebody who kind of started this practice as a student, there's tons of research out there about how impactful it can be to have kids especially draw when they're learning. Similar for adults, but it's especially powerful for children. All right, next slide, please. So if you'll remember the visual alphabet, these 12 symbols, and combine the things that you draw with your 12 symbols and people, next slide, please. You can create your own visual library. And this is something for me that has been really helpful. I've created a visual library that's public about evaluation, in particular about international development, about facilitation. And this has been really helpful for me because as I'm drawing, as Keisuke is doing now, it's been helpful for me to know a lot of icons that I've already developed so that in the moment when I'm facilitating, I can come up with illustrations very quickly. So next slide. This is just a sample of my evaluation visual library and how I created this. This is something that I do in my workshops with evaluators is come up with a word, like I'll say peer learning, and then ask everybody to illustrate as many different ideas that they have for what it means to do peer learning. And so you can see on the left-hand side, there's a couple of ideas that I really like, like putting the puzzle pieces together inside the light bulb, putting two heads together, and other ideas of creativity or evaluation concepts. For example, how would you illustrate monitoring and evaluation, or capacity strengthening improvement? And some tips that I use quite a bit is to turn phrases into icons. So in my line of work, people will say the key point is, or the key takeaway. And so I actually tried to draw a key or a little takeaway bag to kind of make it a bit humorous, or folks will say, what's the big picture? And so I'll very frequently draw an actual picture and have people in it. And then the other tip is to draw an icon of the place that you're in. Usually I'm in person when I'm doing visual capture, but other times as of today, we are very much a global group. So I would probably draw an icon that matches AEW's branding. So here's an example just of what a visual library could look like. And so the next step that I'd recommend for you is to draw your own visual library. But that's another step outside of the workshop today. So I think now, will I turn it back over to you, Keisuke, to close us out with a reflection?
Thank you so much, Kat. I learned new things always when I look at your slides. Any questions to Kat with regard to how do you draw by yourself or working with someone like Kat to come and help visualize? You can type in either Q&A or chat. I think which one is open now? Maybe Q&A if there's any. In the meantime, and if also you have any other question for the Yumiko that you didn't address earlier, please do type in. And I just wanted to share a brief background about how this visualization, how this came up to AEW. Is actually, I used to do the drawing in last year and last year in the AEW in China. And Yumiko came up and said, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm visualizing all those ideas in seminars. I don't understand most of it, but at least I'm drawing what I do understand. And we start talking, oh, that's really great. How about we do that for the community? Because I think that's the relevant point of the visualization. And yeah, that sounds really great. So that's all started in 2 years ago in AEW. So I'm very happy to be back here and presenting what has been done. And maybe from this session, something will come up. Oh, there's a question. How do you get all these idea or visuals icon? What is your muse? Kat?
That's a great question. I think I'll do two things. Something along the lines of what Keisuke was just saying. I find workshops or gatherings like this to be very generative. For example, in a past workshop that I've done, I'll ask folks to draw out what they think of when they hear the word methodology. And almost always in every one of those workshops, I similarly walk away with a new idea, or my thinking expanded by just how somebody else has visualized a concept or question that somebody asked that made me think differently about the way that I illustrate things. So I think my biggest muse is just getting a group together. It could be anyone, your family members, friends, or your colleagues together to just illustrate and draw together separately first, and then to come together and say, oh, this is how I visualized it. This is how I visualized it. Because I find that visual note taking is a really externalizing your internal thinking process. And that's why it's so interesting to me, because it shows very clearly how people think about things very differently in a way that's a lot faster and more open than sometimes verbal communication can be. So I would say to get a group together and just draw. And then the other thing that I really like that I mentioned before is to follow groups or individuals that I find particularly inspiring, and follow them on Twitter or LinkedIn and just see the information that they're putting out there and how they're visualizing concepts, or even how they're applying visual thinking, especially in their evaluation work, which is, I think, why the community of practice for Value Vision is going to be so incredible, because there's so many applications of visual thinking in evaluation that I think have mostly been unexplored. So I would say the two muse ideas would be to get a group together and share some words and start drawing. and then to find individuals whose style you like, and just follow the conversation. And I think towards the end, we can share some resources of places to follow the graphic facilitation community, and there's others out there whose styles I really like. What about you, Keisuke? What works for you?
Where the visual are my kids. I learn a lot from my kids. And they watch YouTube and the schools, and kids are the best teacher when it comes to drawing. And whenever I draw, even like policy-based lending, PBL is very complex idea, but I would sometimes I have to draw it, and then my 12-year-old understand at least something. That's my like small win. But she does, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I think it's not good enough. I mean, it has to, I mean, it's come down to someone who is the beneficiary for this project, and they don't understand what we're doing. It's, yeah, we have to work a little bit harder. So I think that's where my motivation comes.
Mm-hmm. It looks like there's another question of, can the drawings be used in evaluation reports?
Yes. Do you want to take that, or Yumiko, from institutional perspective, how do you think this visual thing that sometimes people do think you know, cartoonish, but given that still 92 people are around, and actually the number of participants is growing, I thought when we start talking about, this is not important, but I think there's enough people to take this seriously. But in WFP, do you think this can be inserted in the report, and how far this can be taken?
I have to challenge that culture, because bureaucracy is a very text-oriented culture. A lot of language-oriented and the written language, and people feel comfortable more about the huge report. But I think we really, in the time of visualization, right? In time of visual. So I think the reporting is also changing, and it also depends on who are you actually targeting, or who do you want to read? So if it's younger people, the audiences, or younger people, or maybe not only younger people who don't read, the communities we working on, most people don't read. Who you really want to reach out with the information? So I was saying that, Keisuke, that this is also part of the democratization process, because people have to be participate and be informed. So it's not, I'm not playing just for playing and drawing. It's more the encouraging participations and expressing themselves. So if you believe that, I think we should do more visualization in reporting too. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with that. And also, again, it's not, drawing is not replacing the report. It's really strengthening it, and it goes in one or the other, but it's just insert infographics or visuals in the thick report, preferably at the very front of the report, and people might find it more useful to sensitize.
To add to that,
go ahead, so Kat.
To add to that, I'll say something that has worked well for me also in adding the visuals to evaluation reports is to doing visual executive summaries at the very front of the report. So that could have kind of the key recommendations that you co-create with participants that they can see themselves in, which is really impactful. And also the main findings of the evaluation report. I've received really positive feedback, so that, like Keisuke said, it's not replacing a longer evaluation report that some folks might get a lot of value from going through, but just offering multiple modalities for people to engage with the content as is needed for them.
And there's another related questions about reporting, which is, do you have consideration of adjusting visualization based on the audience? Or is it more like it is more of embracing the styles we have and being true to it regardless of the audience? What do you think, Kat or Yumiko?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as Yumiko was saying, I really think about who the audience is and especially what level of information they'd like to know, how much detail, and what their vantage point is, especially since there's a lot of acronyms, I think, in our respective fields. I think, like, do they know these acronyms? What language is going to resonate with them? What illustrations are going to resonate with their sector? And so, yeah, I definitely think about the audience in terms of tailoring the visual to them. I also tend to use colors that match the organization that I'm working with. That's just kind of like a small way of also making it feel more familiar. So yes, definitely. And also I think that something that I really enjoy about visual thinking and evaluation is that, and I'm curious too, Keisuke, if you've had this experience, that sometimes I'll go into events or workshops on a topic that I have no idea, like blended finance models or things like that. And I'll have very little understanding, walking into the session, what the topic is about, but just something about visualizing what I hear. I also notice in those sessions, even though I'm not familiar with the audience or the topic, that can be very impactful as well, to have kind of an outsider viewpoint and visualization. So yes, definitely I think about the audience when it comes to conveying the visuals and the amount of detail or jargon and colors, but also I think that it's a ubiquitous language, so to speak. What would you say, Yumiko or Keisuke, on that point?
I'm not similar to the reports. The answer in the similar line with why is the proper audience, how we deliver it. It doesn't have to be handwritten to me. I also make infographics, and the brain is saying visual thinking, how we can connect it visually. And sometimes the audience is like, president prefer to have a digital illustration instead of hand-drawn illustration. And then we better to go with digital illustration. And actually ADB ID has like evaluation illustrated, and which is 4 pages, and it's really condensed, like semi-infographic, semi-reports and highlights of the 70-page report. And I offer to do the drawing, but digital is much faster, quicker, and more clean. So we are doing it in digital version. But drawing, hand drawing, is more useful when it comes to workshop interactions. As someone said, I draw it, wrap it, and just transform in colors, and very engaging and different way to co-create something that doesn't exist. And then hand drawing definitely the way to go. And I cannot do any other style than this. So I tried to copy cat drawings, but I just couldn't. It's really tough to change my style. So when it comes to drawing, I think I only have one repertoire. So that's. Yumiko, do you want to say something about the audience? And
yeah, just so the infographics getting more attentions because the digitalized, and I like infographics too, but it's still, for me, it's passive. When I see the infographic, I'm not in the pictures. But when we do the facilitations, I have to be in the part of it, right? So, and as Kat said, that internalizing the information to externalize, right? So it's input and output, right? So in the facilitation, definitely you need that the engagement and internalize the information and then express and externalize. That process, I think drawing is better. So the purpose is different from reporting and infographics and facilitating evaluation. So for the evaluation facilitation, I definitely believe this drawing together and thinking. Yes. And I also tested this symbol in a training. So for instance, impact evaluation, what does it mean? I can explain verbally. But I asked the people, can you draw it in one symbol and then explain it? Then they could externalize. So you need to both input and output in the exercise. Then the first time it will be, you can really feel and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, drawing,
Yeah.
facilitation and drawing is hands-on. Great.
There were a few questions, Keisuke, in the chat that I
like-
wanted to address. There was one question, I think, from Sarah, I think, about whether or not there are any available visuals online without drawing. And something that I would recommend in response to that, if you feel uncomfortable with drawing or it doesn't work for you, you can find a ton of icons like this. I generally tend to use the Noun Project. There are other icon databases that you can use to make your presentations and reports more visual. I would say start with the Noun Project. That's what I would recommend. And there are also quite a few templates out there, like the templates that I shared. Other graphic facilitators make their templates public that you can download and work with. And make them kind of more of an infographic style that has a mixed feel. There's also a question from Yulianto about how to encourage somebody if they feel that their drawing is bad or if it doesn't come out the way that they want it to. And something that I would say on that is to focus on making it meaningful, not beautiful. So as I mentioned right before we did our exercises, I'll notice that folks, including myself, can have a lot of self-limiting beliefs about the quality of their drawing. And I would encourage you to think about, is this meaningful? Like the test that Keisuke does with his kids of, can you understand this? What does this mean to you? Not focusing on it being a beautiful illustration, but more focusing on what you need to tweak or change in order to make it meaningful, that it makes sense to you for your own note-taking and learning or to others. And then I would just encourage you to keep practicing, to cheer yourself on as you go, because it is a difficult skill, but definitely one that can be learned. And if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, I'll share more about an upcoming workshop that I have to dive more deeply into these exercises and teach yourself how to draw. And then the last one was from Anupa about plagiarism, that if you take another graphic facilitator's artwork and you copy their style, is that not considered plagiarism? And my response to that would be, something that I really appreciate about the graphic facilitation community is this concept of feel like an artist, which is this idea of seeing something that you like, taking it, making it your own, and the idea of being very generative and looking at other people's styles and expanding your practice. Something that's really important to me is to make it your own. So when you take something that you like, to put your own unique spin on it, and also to give credit where credit is due for styles that you like or applications of approaches that you like. So for example, like how I mentioned Scriberia before, others that I find inspiring. So just wanted to make sure that I responded to those, since those were questions that might have been lost in the chat. I'm wondering, Keisuke or Yumiko, if there's other points that you'd add.
Actually, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more questions. We have 15 minutes left, and I want to do one more like engaging part. So I will read out loud. So maybe Yumiko and Kat can take them out. Pick one of 5, or combine together. The first one is we decided, so we just answer it. How do you correct it when you have illustrated something that is not what a speaker in a workshop actually meant? You said drawing is very context-based. Very good question. Thank you, Cheryl. And Kai, how to convince the old school professional that the illustration is as good as the text content? That's a very good question. And Mike, Lisa, what do you consider to be the biggest visual output in terms of impact, how it was received, etc.? Thank you, Mike, for the question. And Barbara asked, can one overdo the graphic, use too much? And Lianto said, to what extent this can be applied to the accompany analysis in evaluation report, or this more appropriate for the workshop? I think this one we already answered in the report. So those are the, and anything else? Have you published anything in the evaluation literature on these techniques? Or another question coming up, if it's using an app, do you have recommended tablet or notebook to use? I think we kind of answered in the concept and the noun project at the stock. Yumiko and Kat, combining all these questions, can you give us some words of wisdom?
So I was thinking about all the schools questions, because I also have to work with old school people. And well, I think you have to identify the needs of all the schools. What do they really want? In my case, I found my older school people still want to communicate internally and also understand the theory of change. So trying to meet still needs-based, what they want to do with this. And I clarified objectives and then products. And then when timeline, then they are convinced. But still, when they're so impressed by Keisuke's graphics, but also they want to have a narratives too. So I have to create some narratives too, and then combine it. But it's gradually expanding the area of graphics more and more. But you have to ask the needs first. Then when they see the benefits of it, they will start to take it. Yeah.
And I would add to that, Yumiko, I think I would encourage you to try to find ways to help your more traditional, maybe some reticent colleagues experience the graphic facilitation or visual thinking exercises firsthand, because I think it is something, and maybe you all are experiencing that now and reading this session title and now actually being in the session and seeing like, oh, wow, there are so many applications. This is really interesting and useful, that I think it's kind of, you have to see it to believe it. So I would encourage you to try to find ways to either hire a graphic facilitator to come into a meeting so that your colleagues can experience it firsthand, or try one of these exercises or a visual facilitation exercise just to get your colleagues thinking in a new way.
Great. Any other question that struck you that you wanted to answer? The other besides old schoolers?
I think one other thing on the old schoolers is also to, especially if these are old school evaluators, to bring in research about the effectiveness of graphic facilitation and visual note-taking for learning and collaboration. And I think, David, you had a question on whether or not we've published anything. I'm wondering if Keisuke and Yumiko, you'd like to speak to the book that you're working on. I'll also share, I've published a bit about this in a couple of books on evaluation. One is called The Art of Evaluation. My work is also featured in Michael Quinn Patton's most recent book about graphic facilitation and evaluation. Another book written by Kylie Hutchinson about evaluation failures and how to really learn meaningfully from failure in the evaluation field. And a couple of blog posts on the American Evaluation Association. It's called AEA 365. So I'd recommend looking there to get some more, I guess, backup, and also to bring in research to your conversations with your colleagues, and potentially also the book that Keisuke and Yumiko are working on now.
Great. Yumiko, any other thoughts before we move on to the last part?
Yes, so it's more a work in progress, and then I'm getting the different information and ideas from different people. So I hope to develop it further. That's quite exciting. So I want to make the evaluation more interesting and then reach a more wider people audience. So, yeah.
Excellent. So let me share my drawing so far that I I was speaking. I supposed to moderate, but I was answering some of the questions which I shouldn't have. Sorry. But this is the drawing so far I got, and I still will continue a little bit before I share with all. And my key takeaway from this whole session is that there's still lots of empty spaces that we didn't talk, but this is still learning. So there's a lot of white spaces and empty open field that we still can fill in. And here's the left side evaluation challenges in all school professionals that kind of waiting, but we need them. We need those challenges, and that's what the reality that we have to face. But all the way to the right is lecture integrative challenge that Yumiko was saying. So like this spectrum where we are, and we cannot say this is the best way to introduce visualization and facilitation. It's just who are you working with, and what is needed, and how this drawing can help to achieve. And those visual alphabet on the top, the visual libraries and evaluation manuals are available, and the network will be starting and growing soon. So all those, the bottom right part of the application will be benefited from this draw it visualization and facilitation. So with that, I would like to ask Mian, can you put the slides again, please? There's a few last slides of concluding slides. What is one thing you learned during today's session that you will take with you? What is your takeaway from this session? May I ask everybody to write on the chat when it becomes available? And that will actually give us some sense of if picture was worth 1,000 words or not, or it was worth spending your busy 90 minutes in the busy schedule. And I'm really surprised that still 84 people hanging out with us. So that is really, yeah, encouraging for us. Publish and everywhere can draw, visual facilitator, visual alphabet, growth mindset, empty spaces for opening for learnings, and excitement and lots of food of thoughts. Thank you. And inspiring. And while we wait for others to write, can you go to the next slide, please? There's a contact. There's a few other comments that some connection or distracted that didn't catch the cat's full presentation, and she will have 2 coming up workshops: visual note taking 101 workshop October 7th and visual thinking evaluation workshop November 12th. And please email Kat directly. Kat, do you want to say something about this?
I was on mute. Just that the first workshop is like my signature visual note-taking 101 workshop. I've gotten really good feedback from it. It's a 3-hour workshop, tons of fun. If you feel like you don't know how to draw but are interested, this is a great workshop to get started. We'll cover all the foundations of drawing. And then the second one is visual thinking and evaluation. So we'll think about how to bring in visual thinking at key points in an evaluation, whether you're sketching data, you're putting together a participatory theory of change, or you're validating evaluation findings. So this has more of an evaluation slant. I'll say that I'd recommend taking the first one, the 101, before coming to the second one if you can, because they'll build on each other, but it's not necessary. So let me know if you'd like to have more details, and if it's okay, I'll just add the links into the chat so you can take a look now if you are interested. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent, thank you. And for evaluation community of practice, I'll be the contact, but also if you want to contact Yumiko directly, her email is not listed, but it's simple, her first name dot last name at wfp.org. Is that right, Yumiko? Am I?
That's right.
Yeah, so please get in touch with her directly if you want to explore that something with her directly. Otherwise, please email me, drop me a line so that I make sure that the manual that we are writing up, we're expecting to do a peer review before it goes to publish. We want to do it as a community to make sure that meets the need of the community. And with that, there's a few more key takeaways. It's written in the chat. That was the takeaways. Kai's takeaway was to really strike balance between the evaluator, audience, and the graphic artist, the rich content. And Maria Consuelo Galicia learned the drawing need not be perfect as long as visually communicate your message. And Natia said, you provide me that drawing during participatory event is great idea and possible for all. And Sheena said, do not lose the curiosity and inspiration to be an artist. Yes, exactly. And tips and tricks, also the noun project. And yes, scroll down a little bit. I never saw the visual. I guess there must be some standardization in the visual to ensure the common standard. Yeah, standardization, that'd be great if we can start talking about standardization and all the common platform. Visualizing phrases, words inspired to all start having a visual library. Major takeaways to evaluation results, cater them to audience and type of information. And takeaways to really strike balance out that, so that ready. And someone said that they will put the infographics in the next report. So that was also wonderful to see. Right? Try it with communities. Great. So that comes to the end. May I invite Yumiko and Kat for the last concluding thoughts or words?
I will just add thank you so much for joining this session. Keisuke, Yumiko, and I had a blast putting it together. So thank you so much for being here. I'd like to really keep the conversation going and stay connected through the community of practice or otherwise. So feel free to reach out to me with the email or attend one of the workshops that I'll be doing. I'll just make two last plugs. One is to continue having a growth mindset and considering the ways in which you are an artist, even if you can't draw. So the ways that you have, creativity and artistry in your work in evaluation or otherwise, even if you're not the drawing type, because I think that mindset can be really expansive. And the second thing for those that are looking for tools, especially since we're at home quite a bit, the digital tools, I'd recommend getting a tablet or using a tablet, borrowing one, and trying with concepts, especially for virtual meetings, since it adds another layer of engagement. And if you're interested in the more tactile experience, I'll recommend there's a German company called Neuland, and I'll type it in the chat now. These are the best markers and materials for visual facilitation, graphic recording, sketching, and I'll just show you, I have a ton of these markers in my house. They're permanent, they'll get on your clothes, so be careful. But if you're looking to take your visual note-taking practice to the next level, I'd say try the digital applications, or to also maybe treat yourself to some of these fantastic tools. Thanks so much. I'll turn it over to you, Yumiko.
So thanks, Kat. So it was really nice working with you. And thank you very much for organizing this, Keisuke and Kat. And then thank you for 83 people to participate in this session. I think it was the biggest one we ever had. So with this one, it's actually the 1, 2, 3rd time. So it's getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, I think I'm enjoying this networking. And then I want to make a network a real network. So normally when we call network, it's just a network, and we don't really have something appearing, coming up, but we want to make it real network this time. And then every time I present it, I think I'm getting input as well as output again. So I'm getting new ideas, and then maybe we should do more data visualization people and combine with this. And then so the infographic part, people will know what we are doing too. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Mia and Connie, who was working so hard behind the scene, and they are the ones who control all the tools. So thank you very much. And 3 more days to go for you guys for AW. And there's a lots of great other sessions. So please check them out. And with that, thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this session, and hope it was fruitful, and hope we will continue talking about visualization and the fun stuff. Thank you. Bye.